Hello, everyone, and thank you once again for tuning in to another episode of About My Father's Business Thursdays, where I like to highlight Christian businesses, services, and products. Today, I have another life coach with me. His name is Bobby Keith, of course, as you can see by his name tag. But before we go into what we're going to be discussing today, which is a very, very powerful story that I'm excited to get to, I just want to remind you all to please like, share, follow me on social media. I am on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and also Facebook. You can catch any of my shows or watch replays of my shows on Facebook and YouTube, but you can also watch me on any Android or Apple device because I am now on those platforms as well. You just have to download the app called the Entertainment Theater, and you can catch daily episodes of my current and past shows, and also other independent creators and filmmakers and things like that. So you guys, please go ahead and download and support. Check us out, and of course, catch replays of my shows there as well. So before we get into the interview that we want to do today, I want to let you all know that this is not the first time Bobby and I have recorded this show. We tried to do it before. We were having a lot of technical difficulties, and we're finally able to get those things worked out. We even kind of ran into some problems recently, but we're here to talk about this. And Bobby has some very, very enlightening and powerful things to discuss. And I'm really glad that we finally were able to get everything squared away so we can have this conversation today. But Bobby, before we get into the conversation, can you let people know a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. First off, let me just say, if there's ever been an example of never giving up, I think you and I have shown that over the last few weeks trying to get
Yeah.
this going.
Yeah.
uh, yeah. My name is Bobby Keith. I'm Next year I'll be 60 years old, so I'm 59 years old, and I've gone through a journey over the last 4 years where I just finally got to a place where my life had to change, and I had to make some decisions, some that were not very easy for me to make based on some of my background, and we'll go through some of that later.
Yeah.
But I, all of that culminated with me starting this business called Positive Works. And basically, it's a Christian-based coaching practice where I try to help people with different things that are going on in their lives, but I use Christian principles in doing it. I have an associate's degree in theology, which I got many years ago, and I even did some work in the ministry for a while. I'm currently doing a little bit of work in the ministry, and again, we can go through that a little later.
Yeah, and then you just revealed to me right before we started recording today that you have started writing a book as well. So is that in connection with your coaching business, or?
It's a combination of the coaching business and the just the ministry as well. It's where I see the world at right now, and basically the working title on the book is "Make Love Great Again." In connection with 1 Corinthians 13, where the last verse is, "Now abideth these three, faith, hope, and love, but the greatest of these is love." And I believe that unconditional love is missing in our society today. And that's one reason that we have a lot of the turmoil that's going on that we have.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. And that's a whole different conversation that it definitely needs to be had. So, but let's get to the reason that you're here today, because again, a powerful story. So I can just imagine your perspective on the book just based on some of the life experiences that you've had that have brought you up until this point today. And so so can you talk a little bit about, and you kind of revealed a little bit ago that all of this started from some life experience or some big changes that you had to make over the past 4 or 5 years. So can you go into what some of those changes were, and then how they segued into you starting the coaching practice?
Sure. One thing I want to bring up is I had probably one of the best childhoods anybody could have. I was born in North Georgia, and to some great loving parents. Actually, my mom lost 3 children before I was born.
Wow.
She had one miscarriage. She had one miscarriage. Had a son that was stillborn, and then had a daughter that was born and lived 6 hours before she passed away.
Oh,
So,
wow.
a couple of years after the little girl passed away, I was born. And then about 22 months after that, I had another sister that was born, and she survived as well. So,
Oh, wow.
it
Wow.
was just,
Wow.
yeah, it was just me and my sister growing up. And like I say, I had great parents, and anything that I say, I do not want that fact to be left out.
Mm.
Wonderful parents, the best that anybody could have. And I guess part of it was because they had lost 3 children before I was born. A lot of times they were overprotective.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
yeah.
so, I was not raised with the mindset of taking chances in life.
Okay.
It was pretty much playing it safe, doing things in order, like get your education, get a good job, raise a family, just go from there. Not taking any chances, not stepping out. They didn't want me to fail at anything.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And again, it was just because that's how they were. I mean,
Yeah.
they played it safe. They didn't really step out and take chances, even though certain opportunities came up in their life where they could have stepped out and taken some chances. They never really did that.
Mm.
So with that being said, that's how I had been raised, and that's how I'd lived my life, up until about 4 years ago.
Wow.
Now, I did get married at the age of 24, became a father at the age of 25. My first marriage did end in divorce, and I had lived in Georgia my entire life. I met someone from Texas. I decided to move to Texas, get remarried, so I married a second time. That marriage ended in divorce a short time later. And so I had pretty much been living on my own after that. I decided to stay in Texas. I had a good job. I was an optician, been working as an optician for 30 years.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. And so, I had what a lot of people would consider a pretty good life. But then just little things started happening. Before I moved to Texas, my mom had a health episode, which she nearly lost her life. But she did remain in ill health for 17 years. I just lost her September of last year. And my dad is still alive. He's still in Georgia. As I said, I have a daughter. She's still in Georgia. She's married now. But about 4 years ago, all of these things started building up in my life. My mom's sickness was beginning to get a little worse. My dad was starting to experience some health problems at that time. I'm 900 miles away. My sister's trying to take care of them, and she's sending me messages, this is getting to be a little bit too much. You may need to think about moving back. And I loved where I was living. I didn't want to leave Texas, but at the same time, I loved my parents. I loved my sister. I hated everything she was going through. I was in a relationship with someone at that time. That relationship ended badly. As I said, I enjoyed my job, but I got to where I did not like where I was doing my job. I didn't like the company I was working for at that time. So all of these things just started to build up one upon the other. And then June of 2018, I suffered a heart attack.
Oh, wow.
And I was placed in the hospital. I had a 95% blockage in the artery they call the widowmaker.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, most people don't survive that.
Yeah, I'm assuming that has to do with the widowmaker title. Yeah. Oh my goodness! Wow.
Because most people don't realize they have that problem until, a lot of times they don't realize that problem has occurred until the autopsy.
Wow.
So that's why they call it the widowmaker. But I was put into the hospital. I had a stent put in. I was released from the hospital pretty much within just a few days to go right straight back to work, go right straight back into the thing that was some of the things that were causing stress in my life.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Still dealing with a broken relationship, still dealing with sick parents, uh, still dealing with being at a place I didn't like. And now here I am, I'm faced with my own mortality and trying to get all of that in my mind. And it honestly got to be too much.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I went back to work because my cardiologist told me there was nothing physically wrong with me to keep me from going back to work. I didn't have a real strenuous job as far as physical. So about a month back to work, I just couldn't function. I couldn't function at all. So I went to my primary care doctor, and I explained to him what was going on. Well, he had a heart attack a year earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So he kind of knew what was going on in my mind, and he could understand. So he told me, he said, how much time do you think you need off? And I said, well, I can take off about 30 days and still hold my job. And I said, but 4 weeks, 28 days, I think if I have that much time, I can kind of get myself back together.
Mm.
So he told me, he said, well, I'll write you out for the 4 weeks. He said, under one condition. And I said, what's that? He said, you can't stay here. He said, you have to get out of town. You have to go somewhere where you can just get away from everything here, try to get your mind clear, think things through. So I decided to go to Georgia to visit my family. And I also had a former girlfriend when I was in high school. We had reconnected. When we reconnected, she was married at the time. She lived in Maine, and her husband had recently passed away.
Oh, wow.
And we had stayed in contact. And she said, I've been thinking about coming to see you in Texas. She said, but I haven't been able to do it. She said, if I send you the money that I've been saving, would you consider coming to Maine? That's where she lived, in Maine. And I said, sure. So I spent 2 weeks with my parents, and I spent 2 weeks in Maine.
Okay.
And, it was a time that I was able to get my thoughts together. And I came to a point in a place in my life where at that point in time, I was 55 years old. I was not happy with my life. My life had not turned out the way I thought it would be.
Mm.
Again, I had been in the ministry at one time. I had an associate's degree in theology. I still felt like God had a purpose for my life, but I had just been completely lost. And I decided at that point in time that I needed to make some changes.
Mm.
And one of the first things I needed to do was I needed to get myself back together. So I started reading self-help books, started watching self-help videos on YouTube, started watching some of the life coaches, people like Tony Robbins and Les Brown, and listening to people like Wayne Dyer and Mel Robbins and just all of these motivational speakers.
Well, can I interrupt you for a second? Because
Sure.
Something that you told me before is that you were in such a rut that a friend kind of pushed you out of it. Can you go into that a little bit? Because I think that's a really powerful part of the story.
Yeah, absolutely. I did have a friend, and I had not known him very long. He and I had met through a mutual friend, and he knew a lot of the stuff that I was going through. And you know how it is when you have family members or you have real close friends and you get in a bad situation. They are there to comfort you, to tell you that everything's going to be okay. And, you've gotten out of a bad relationship, and they say, don't worry, you deserve better, and better will come along. And this friend didn't do that. He kicked me in the butt. He kicked me in the butt. He said, quit laying around feeling sorry for yourself. He says, yes, your life may be a mess, but he said, the only person that can get you out of that mess is you. Well, you and God. And he said, you got to quit worrying about the old relationships and how people treat you at work and how other people are treating you. He said, people are going to do what they're going to do. You can't change anyone but yourself.
Mm.
And he would not allow me to feel sorry for myself.
Mm.
And that was the push that I needed. That was the punch in the gut that I needed to wake up and say, you're right. And so, yeah, then I got into the self-help books and the motivational videos, and I got involved. Me and this friend, we actually started a Bible study not long after that.
Mm-hmm.
So I was trying to get my life back in line spiritually. And I eventually signed up for some coaching classes and ended up getting 3 different coaches to work with me at one time. Now, this friend of mine was not a coach. He was someone that was older than me, that had experienced life, and he was just giving it to me straight.
Yeah. Another thing, really quickly, another thing that you which I thought was really powerful, that when we talked about this before, you were talking about how there are so many people that are Christians and have been Christians for a very long time that just live in this state of, was it fear that you said, or it was fear or uncertainty, and you really felt like you needed to kind of address that, because you see a lot of Christians that are just kind of not moving forward in some certain ways because of the way that their mindset. And that's kind of another thing that you in hindsight that you wanted to address.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I call it fear. I don't know what else you would call it, because I knew what I needed to do to step out and make things better. I was just afraid to do it because, again, I had been taught to never take chances. I had been taught not to fail. And failure was a very, very scary thing for me.
Okay.
And I didn't want to, I didn't know how to experience failure.
Oh, wow.
But that's what my life was, or at least that's what I felt like it was at that time, a failure. I had 2 failed marriages. I had failed to be the father that I, wanted to be. I wasn't a terrible father to my daughter, but I definitely wasn't the best father I could be, because I wasn't in the house. My job, I mean, I had gotten to a level in my job where I didn't see myself moving up any higher than I already was. I wasn't going to go anywhere with that. So yeah, and I was still having failed relationship after failed relationship. And it's easy when you're in a failed relationship, and this is another thing that the friend of mine brought out. It's easy to blame the other people in the relationship.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's kind of like he told me. He said, you know what? If you keep having failed relationship after failed relationship after failed relationship,
the common denominator.
The common denominator is you. It's me.
Right.
And so maybe there's something that I'm doing wrong that I needed to do.
Yeah.
So, but yes, and Christians do get in that situation, and that's one reason I started a Christian coaching business. As I was saying, especially during COVID, I saw so many Christians just gripped with fear. Fear of getting the disease, fear of getting out, fear of associating with people. We got to the point to where we were told to be afraid to go to church, to be afraid to be around other people. And, a lot of them are that way in their lives. They're stuck in a rut in their lives, and they want to step out, but they're afraid. And yet, a lot of these same people, you go up to them and ask them what their favorite Bible verse is, and they'll say, well, it's 1 Corinthians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ. And then you tell them, well, let's step out and do so. Oh, I can't.
Yeah. Wow.
Well, you just got through telling them. So, I got to thinking, that's where the problem is. Yes, I can do all things through Christ, but the problem is we don't let Christ get in there. We try to handle it all by ourselves. One of the things that I've kind of come to a realization, especially over the last couple of months with my coaching business, a lot of coaches talk about a different mindset, and they talk about getting yourself in good physical condition. I don't hear a lot of them talking about getting yourself in a good spiritual condition.
Absolutely.
Now, they'll talk about the spirit. They'll talk about higher powers, but a lot of them are afraid, I think, to come from it from a specific Christian point of view.
Exactly. Yeah.
because we live in a world today where you don't want to offend people, and
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, there are other religions out there,
Right.
but but I decided, you know what, God has used me in the past, and this is what He wants to use me for now.
Mm.
My past experiences. Did you remember a guy in the Bible by the name of Job?
Of course.
Had everything in the world a man could want. He had a good family, he had riches, he had property. You know, everything was going great for Job, and all of that changed in one day. You
Mm.
know, you go back and read everything he lost, all of that happened in one day,
Mm.
because when somebody came to give him bad news, the Bible says, and while this person was still speaking, here comes somebody else to give him more bad news.
Right. Wow.
And Job's response was, "The Lord giveth, the Lord taketh away.
Yeah.
Blessed be the name of God." And uh, his wife even told him, "You know, you just need to curse God and die." And he says, "Wow, are we only supposed to accept the good things from God, and then when bad things happen, we just walk away from Him?"
Mm.
And so that started speaking to me as far as the experiences that I had had in my life. Some of them were, yeah, bad experiences, but I got through those. I gained confidence. I gained a peace in the fact that I was able to start putting trust back into God, and putting my faith in Christ, and just saying, "Okay, God, this is all yours. And whatever you want to do with it, I'm just here to follow."
Mm.
And
Mm.
yeah, it took me down some paths I was not ready to go down, because I did have to exercise faith. One of the
Yeah.
things that happened during COVID, I did get the opportunity, and this would not have happened if it had not been for COVID. I did get the opportunity to take early retirements, and able to draw some of the retirement out of my retirement account.
Mm-hmm.
I was withdrawing it early. I had not been the age yet, but because of COVID, they were allowing some people, because of
Yeah.
expenses that they still had, they were allowing people to draw money out of their retirement account without a penalty.
Mm.
So I drew enough out that I was able to retire.
Okay.
Now, one reason I did that was also so that I could go back to Georgia more and spend more time with my family, especially with my mom and dad, and especially my mom with her health condition deteriorating. So I retired on September the 25th, 2020.
Mm.
Um, in August of last year, actually, it's coming up in a couple of weeks, the 1 year anniversary of when I went to Georgia for a 2 week visit to visit my family. And I ended up getting COVID. My sister and brother in law ended up getting COVID.
Oh
Now,
wow.
I tested negative. They kept telling me I was negative for it, but I did lose my taste and my smell. So I was pretty sure I had it.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, even though I was testing negative for it. And there were about 2 or 3 days there I really felt crummy, like I had the flu or something.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, I like to use natural cures as much as I can, and
Mm.
a great natural antibiotic is garlic. So I would buy garlic and start eating cloves of garlic.
Mm-hmm.
When you eat a clove of garlic and you can't taste it, if you've ever tried to eat a clove of garlic before, you know something's wrong.
Wow. Wow.
But I did get over it fairly quickly. Well, in the process, my mom and dad both ended up getting COVID too,
Wow.
and I took them to the hospital at the same time. They were both admitted. Uh, I told my mom at that time, I said, because I asked both of them, my dad wanted to go. He wanted to go to the hospital. My mom had been avoiding it. And I told her, I said, Dad wants to go. I'm going to take him. Do you want to go? And so she finally shook her head. Well, yeah, you know, I'll go. So as I was sitting there with her, I said, now, you know, they're probably going to admit you. And once they do, because of the COVID policies, we cannot come visit you.
Mm.
And she said she understood that. Well, my dad was released the very next day, but they kept mom. And this was a Tuesday, I believe, that I took them.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, we kept calling the nurses and getting the reports. And Wednesday, we got a report that mom was responding to the COVID treatments like dad was. She was responding positively to it. She still wasn't eating or drinking like they wanted her to, but, she was starting to respond to the COVID treatment. Thursday, we got a call that she was still responding to the treatment, but she was starting to have a little bit of problems with her kidneys. And then by Sunday, we get a call saying that her kidneys are shutting down.
Wow.
They don't feel like there's any more they can do for her. They lifted the COVID restrictions for our visitation, and we were able to go visit at that point in time. And of course, I went with my dad, and we sat with her for a while. He basically said his goodbyes to her.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because we were pretty much told that they were going to put her in hospice care, and they didn't expect her to make it more than 2 or 3 days.
Wow.
Monday, I went back all day long. I played Christian music for her. I read out of the Bible to her. I talked with her. I prayed with her. Of course, she's on morphine during all of this time, so she's not really conscious. She'd open her eyes every now and again and look at me, but and about 6:00 Monday evening, we were told they finally had a room for her on the hospice floor, and they were going to move her up to hospice. So we moved her up to hospice, and actually it was probably about 8:30, 9:00 that evening when we got her up there. And basically, to make a long story short, just after midnight, she passed away.
Wow.
The last thing that I read to her was out of 1 Corinthians chapter 15. It basically talks about the resurrection of Christ and how we will be a part of that resurrection one day. And it ends with a part of death. Where's thy victory? Where's thy sting? And that was the last thing that I read to her before she passed. But the thing was, if I had not retired when I did, I wouldn't have been able to be there.
Right.
My mom's greatest fear in life was that she would die alone. And because I was able to retire early, that didn't happen. I was the only person in the room with her when she passed.
Wow.
But I was able to be there. Wow. And she happened to pass away on my daughter and son-in-law's 8th wedding anniversary.
Wow.
So when we had to pick out clothes for the funeral, she still had the outfit she wore to their wedding, and so my dad said, let's bury her in that.
Yeah.
And the day that we buried her was September 25th of 2021 last year, which was exactly 1 year to the date that I retired.
Yeah.
September 25th, 2020. In that 1 year period, I figured I had about 6 to 8 extra weeks with her that I would not have had if I had not retired.
Right. Wow. Wow. So it just seems like, from what you're saying, you're going through all these life changes, like really, really big life changes, really having to reflect on like, okay, right. Who am I? Where am I going? What do I want? And things like that to kind of figure out what direction you wanted to take your life in. And according to you, this is how you started going into coaching, and you started really trying to build up your spirit, build up your mind, really kind of deal with some things. And can you talk a little bit about how now that led you into opening your own business?
Absolutely. When I actually started the business about a year ago, because again, I had been working with coaches and they had helped me get to where I was getting in a better place for myself. And I wanted to be able to do that for other people. And it's amazing because probably maybe a week before I took my mom and dad to the hospital, my mom and I had a conversation. Now, one of the great things about me living in Texas and not in Georgia was every time I went to visit, knowing my mom was in bad health, every time I left, we both knew it could be the last time we would see each other. Okay. So we would actually sit down and have these heart-to-heart conversations that, she wouldn't have with my sister, because my sister only lived 5 miles away. Every time my sister walked out the door, it was see you tomorrow.
Okay.
because you
Yeah.
have that in your mindset. You're just going to see them the next day.
Yeah. Yeah.
So every time I left, we knew might be the last time we would see each other. So we would have these heart-to-heart conversations. And one of the last conversations we had, she looked at me one day and she said, "Things don't bother you anymore, do they?" And I said, "No, ma'am, they don't." She says, "You're not afraid of anything, are you?" And I said, "No, ma'am, not really." She said, "You're not afraid to die?" And I said, "No, ma'am." Because she already knew that I had experienced the heart attack,
Yeah.
3 years
Yeah.
earlier at that time.
Yeah.
And I'd always told her that too when I'd leave. I said, I could still go before you. And my first visit after the heart attack, she said, "You better not ever do that again."
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
but so she was actually somebody I did get to coach and just share with her, because my mom had been one of those people who was fearful most of her life and anxious.
Yeah.
Again, a loving, a great mother, but she had that. So yeah, I decided I wanted to expand that to other people. I started the Positive Works, and one of the things that I came to a realization of is we are, again, triune beings, body, mind, and spirit. And I wanted to address the spirit part too, because I think that's very important that we do that. One of the things too that I just came to a realization of not long ago, there was a Pharisee that came to Jesus one time and he asked him a question. He said, "What is the greatest commandment?" And Jesus responded, he said, "That you're to love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, with all of your mind, and with all of your strength." And then he said, "The second commandment is like unto it, love thy neighbor as thyself." Now we hear that quoted a lot, love thy neighbor as thyself. But that first commandment is to love God. So, I think we need to get in that position. Now, he says the second, we need to get in that position where we are loving God and we're able to put our faith and trust in him. But then he says, love thy neighbor as thyself. Well, I think a lot of the problems that we have today is people don't love themselves. Love thy neighbor as thyself. Yeah. If you don't love yourself, how can you love other people?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's where I was. A lot of the turmoil I was going through is because I didn't love myself. I didn't love the fact that I had 2 failed marriages. I didn't love the fact that I was not the father I thought I should have been to my daughter. I didn't love myself because I was getting up every morning going to a job I hated when I knew I could be doing so much more. I didn't love myself because I was afraid to step out and take chances. I didn't love myself because I couldn't have a successful relationship with someone else.
Wow.
I didn't love myself because I had let my spiritual life, neglected it for so long. Just so many things that, and I didn't love myself because I couldn't forgive myself. So
wow.
I had to start working. And one of the things I had to start working on was not only forgiving people that had hurt me, but I had to forgive myself for hurting myself. And so those are some of the things that I really started working on. And that's what I want to help other people do. I just think that, especially Christians, we have so much potential because we serve an awesome and an almighty God who can do so much for us, but we fail to let him do the work. And a lot of people say, well, I've got a pastor I can talk to. But do you really talk to your pastor? Or do you want to talk to your pastor? When I was going through my first divorce, I had a pastor that I went to talk to because, I was lost in my mind on what I should be doing. And I'm not saying all pastors are this way, but basically, again, I had an associate's degree in theology. I had been doing some work in the ministry during that time. And his response was to me, for everything I was going through was, well, you know what the Bible says, just do it. Well, yes, I knew what the Bible said, but I was having problems doing it. I was having problems. And some people are in churches that are so big they feel lost, and even if they did want to talk to the minister, they might not get to the minister. They might get to somebody else, an associate pastor or somebody else working in the church. Some people are in churches so small they're afraid that if they do go to the minister, that everybody in the congregation is going to know about it. So they're afraid to talk. So I wanted to open up where people would have a safe place to come to. I'm not here to be preachy, but I will use the Bible. I will quote scriptures like 2 Timothy 1:7. God has not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. So if you're experiencing fear, and I'm talking about fear stepping out doing what God wants you to do or what you feel like God wants you to do. If you're experiencing fear, that's not from God. Fear is good in some instances. You don't want to walk into a burning building.
Right.
Fear is good in that instance. A lot of people will do this because they are too fearless, but I'm not going to drive down the road over 100 miles an hour. Because of fear. I think that's a good fear to have. But when I think we need to get up to a place where we're discovering what we feel like God's purpose is for our lives. I believe we all have a purpose. I believe that we can find out what that purpose is. I don't believe age should be a factor. I didn't start my journey until I was 55. I'll be 60 next year. My goal is to live to be 100. So that still gives me 40 years to keep going and keep pushing. And I want to help. I just want to help anybody who feels like they need that. Even if you're not a Christian, I will be happy to talk with you. But understand, you're going to be hearing the Bible. And and a lot of people say, well, you're putting yourself in a pretty narrow spot there. But God's the one that's got me through all of this, and I feel like I'm doing a disservice if I don't use God in my coaching business.
Exactly. And the same for me. I'm also a certified life and relationship coach, and I'm the same. Like, hey, if I can't tell you how I got through it and then let you know that it was God, then we can't even really have a conversation because I'm missing key components that helped me, and then I'm not able to give that to you. So I totally understand. But this is probably the quietest I have been on any podcast episode that I've recorded. I'm just really intrigued by your story, and of course, I know some other things that we've discussed that were not mentioned. And I really think there's a lot of key points you can pull out of there. Just life changes in general, feeling like a failure, feeling disappointed. Getting older, starting over. I mean, there's just so many things in there that I know because you work your way out of it that you could give back to people who are in that situation. And so, I mean, even the story about your mom, like you were saying, she basically was your first coaching client because of what you were going through at the time. You were able to minister her in a way before she passed. And so it's just really a lot of powerful things to your story. And I can just imagine from those experiences, because I think that's what makes the best coaches. The best coaches are people who have been through it, found their way out of it, and now they're kind of paying it forward, so to speak, and giving to you the lessons that it's like they're helping you learn the lessons that it was harder for you to learn. They're kind of giving it to you in an easier way, because then you don't have to go through so much trying to figure out. You have somebody say, hey, this is kind of what I got out of my own experience. I
want to be like a lighthouse. I don't want to take over your ship. I just want to guide you through the rough seas and get you into smoother sailing. I will say this. I was on a Zoom call last night. There's a group of us that are planning a high school reunion. And, I look back at how many of the people I went to school with are no longer with us. How many are my age now that are going through physical illnesses, and we're not guaranteed tomorrow. I had a heart attack 4 years ago, but I feel like I'm in pretty good shape. I'm still overweight, and I'm working on that. But I'm in pretty good physical, and I want to enjoy my life, and I want to be a benefit to other people. So it's never too late if you're still breathing, you still got a purpose in life. You still can make changes. You can still live an abundant life. And that's actually what I call myself. I call myself an abundant life coach.
Great. I I love it, and I can really see the depth in your coaching just from the conversation that we're having. And I really hope anybody who is touched by the things that you said, they can relate to some of the transitions that they're going in their own life, whether older or younger. I really hope that they reach out to you to take advantage of that, because we all need help through these
Yes, we
different
do.
phases in life. And just like what you said about your pastor who said, hey, you know what the Bible says, do it. It's not that simple. I really wish it was. I really do. Right? But it's not. And God understands that, which is why he has given people gifts of teaching, gifts of healing, gifts of encouragement, things like that, to help us, to help the body, because we do need help on our different transitions of life. And we're really just kind of representing a piece of God to other people, because God understands that we need help along the way. So I really thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. I feel like, of course, I say this all the time, but it's true every time, that we could talk longer and kind of dive into some other things. But can you let people know where they can find you, a little bit more about your business?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't have like a website to go to. I haven't really invested in that right now, mainly because I just want to work with people right now, and I don't want to have to spend hours building up a website. But I do have a Facebook page. So you can go to facebook.com/positive works for me. That's positive works, the number 4, me. And that's how you can find me on Facebook.
Okay.
I also have an email address, same thing, positiveworksforme@yahoo.com. You can hit me up on the email. Send me an email. Let me know that you've seen the show, that you're interested. If you do that, I'll give you 2 free coaching sessions right off the bat to start with. And we can get you started. And then I've got a lot of different packages that, depending on what you want to work on and how much you want to work on it, I try to make everything affordable, because, I want to help people. That's my main goal, is helping people. Yeah. And so get with me either way, facebook.com/positive works for me, or positive works for me @yahoo.com, and with an email. And I'll be glad to talk with you.
Okay, great. And so I will have your contact information for anybody who didn't get a chance to write that down, or you don't want to forget. It will be above this post. You can go ahead and click on those links and reach out to Bobby if that's what you're interested in doing. And I just thank you again so much, Bobby, for coming on and sharing your story and sharing your coaching business. I really feel like it is a blessing for everybody who reaches out to you, because I can tell there's a lot of richness and depth and knowledge and that you've gained from your life experience. So thank you so much for coming on. Is there any last words you want to say before we wrap up?
I just want to thank you for your patience. We got through all of these technical issues we were having. Thank you for the opportunity to do this. And, anytime you would like to have me back later on to check to see how things are going, or maybe for any other type of broadcast you won't want to do, podcast, just get in touch with me. You know how to do it. And again, thank you for the blessing of being able to do this.
Yeah, no problem. And thank you so much. And I will definitely reach out to you when I can see some things that we can do down the line. So I definitely will be reaching out. So thank you again. We've kind of went a little bit over the time, so I want to go ahead and wrap up. So thank you all for tuning in. Again, Bobby's information is above this post. And if you're interested in sharing your own Christian business service or product, please reach out to me, and then we can discuss your own story. So thank you so much, you guys. Be blessed. Have a good day.
God bless.